Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to Home Buying Tips. In today's video, we'll take a look at buying a house, realities versus fantasy. So what does that mean? It means that a lot of people contact a real estate agent about a certain property, and from my experience, usually that home buyer does not buy that property that they first contacted you about. Why? So my name is Andrew Finney. Please consider me your real estate geek. I'm always here to help. My contact information is in the show more description below and always on the backside of each and every video. If you haven't already done so, I'd like to ask you to please go ahead and subscribe to this channel and like this video now. So let's go ahead and lead in with 5 common reasons or 5 ways to reassess your home search if it's just not working out for you. You know, you contact that real estate agent about that home that you saw on Zillow or Realtor or one of these other big websites, and it was gorgeous. You just wanted it. You had to move into it, and you contacted a real estate agent, and guess what happened? The home was already sold, and the information just wasn't updated on those big sites to let you know that. Or perhaps, you know, whenever you started meeting with a lender, you learned that, oh wow, that home was $500,000 and we're approved for $400,000. So what to do whenever you get into this problem between reality versus fantasy? You might want to consider the following 5 things as far as compromises that you might want to make in your home search. Discuss it if you're the main decision maker. Consider it if you have other decision makers involved, husband, wife, wife, whatever the situation may be. Discuss it with all the key players involved so that you guys can figure it out and go from there. So whenever you're troubleshooting a home search, number one thing that you want to try to do is always stick within your price. Nobody needs to overspend on a house, and in fact, if there's a deal to be had, it'd be better to find the deal that might take a little bit of extra work but will cost you less at the end of the day than buying the house that's going to be over budget and cost you even more to maintain than you were ready to do. But the number one thing that you do whenever you reassess a home search is actually trying to expand out the area. So you have that area of town in mind that you really enjoy. You really like the home, you really like the communities, you really like maybe the school districts and everything else that are in that location, and the amenities from shopping and everything, but it's just not affordable for you. So what do? Well, look around the area, look around those communities and see what are the next, like number 2 communities, if you will, number 2, 3, 4 communities, so that you give yourself option A, B, C, D, and E, right? And look at those communities to see if those other communities will work for you and the style of homes will work for you. You know, if you fixate too much on one specific community, a home may not come up for sale, or it may not come up for sale that's within your price range. And if there is one that does come up that's everything that you ever wanted it, be prepared to face extremely stiff competition, because if you're wanting that much, that means there's probably at least 100 other buyers in your marketplace wanting it just as bad. So be careful with that. The second thing that you can consider is actually considering light cosmetic work. Let's say that you see that house and it just doesn't look so pretty. It needs a new paint job on the outside. It needs a new paint job on the inside. It might need some new flooring or some work done to it, right? That home could be your best friend, and it could be your new place if you're open-minded to it. By expanding your thought process from having a turnkey move-in ready home with all the bells and whistles, with all the upgrades, with all the renovations already done, and you notice probably in your marketplace, like a lot of other marketplaces, those homes tend to fly off the market as quickly as they come on because they're so gorgeous and ready to go for somebody. But if you pare it back and you say, oh, you know what, this home's not so bad, all we gotta do is repaint it, or you know, all we need to do is re-landscape the backyard or front yard or whatever the case may be, and it's not going to cost us that much, and yet we could probably get this home for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 less than the other home that we really wanted that was $440,000, but our max budget is $400. We might be able to pick this house up at $380,000, $390,000. Now wouldn't that be a good deal for you? And all you had to do was slap a coat of paint in the house, right? Something to consider whenever you're talking about the different things that you can live without, or as far as the current condition of the property. You can always do whatever you want, and sometimes you got to transition your thought process, especially if you've been renting for a long time, going into home ownership. Whatever you want to do to that house that's legal and ethical and everything else and within compliance of your local regulations and laws, you can do. So, you know, just keep that in mind. You can change the paint on a house, and if you're in an HOA, you just get it approved. Now, the other thing that you want to take a look at is your wants and needs list. This is where a lot of people are pretty interesting. You know, whenever I meet with them in a buyer consultation and they're chatting about what their needs and wants are, it's kind of interesting because sometimes it's like the first time the husband and wife or the decision makers that are buying the house have actually expressed what they're looking for in their new home. Now, the husband may say, hey, I want at least 3+ bedrooms and a good size yard. The wife might say, hey, I need an open concept home and a really nice kitchen, right? Here's the thing. Beyond that, they didn't have any real discussions about, okay, what if the house is 3 beds and a den? What happens if the house is 2 bedrooms and a den? What if you can remove a wall and it's not going to cause any issues to the structure itself and make it more open concept? What happens if you spend $2,000 to $3,000 on granite and painting out the cabinets or restaining the cabinets to make it the way that you want? You know, they haven't had these kind of conversations about what's most important to them and why it's most important to them. You know, whenever you consider this, it's interesting, because in having wonderful conversations with people and just simply asking questions, being very curious about what's most important to them, so I know how best to help them out the same way your trusted real estate advisor is going to do with you, it's interesting, because sometimes it's like the first time the husband has really heard what the wife is looking for, or it's the first time the wife has heard the first time the husband has expressed what he's really looking for in the home. And sometimes I realize they were trying to make a decision, as happens very often, what they're thinking their significant other or their spouse are looking for. They're actually thinking, you know, he would really like this, or, you know, she would really like that. But they never really talked about it until they met in the office and we start talking about it aloud, and they're like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know that wasn't such a big issue. And she's like, well, you never asked. And he's like, yeah, nor did you. So, you know, it's those kind of things right there that are very interesting, provides revelations, and can really go a long ways to helping you troubleshoot your home search and moving from fantasy land into reality, so that you can actually have a great and wonderful experience searching for your new home and find that right home for you and your family, if you have a family or whatever the case may be. So the other thing that you can do is, if you're really crunched, and sometimes this happens unfortunately with first-time homebuyers a lot, or different people of different socioeconomic strata, you know, you can look for extra cash, and there's a few ways that you can look for extra cash. I mean, obviously we can't just go out to a tree and start plucking off Benjamins from the tree at whim. I mean, it'd be kind of cool if we could, but that's not the reality. That's back to fantasy land. So ways of looking for extra cash is you could contact your family and your friends. You can actually ask them for what's called gift funds. Now, different loan programs will allow gift funds, and get with your local loan officer and your trusted real estate advisor about how that works, and see if that's something that you could do if your family and friends are willing to assist you with that. Another thing is I made a video in 2017 about crowdfunding. This is another way that you could possibly essentially get gift funds, but by using crowdfunding as an opportunity. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. Who knows, unless you give it a shot. But the last time I checked, anytime you didn't ask a question, the answer was always no. So by asking the question, you stand a 50-50 shot of getting a yes. So, you know, something to consider there. And then different down payment assistance loan products that might be available to you. You want to talk with your local loan officer, ask them if there's any state or local or county loan programs for first-time home buyers, how they work. Make sure that you're understanding the pros and cons of them. And just for reference, you want to ask them about the interest rate, because most of these down payment assistance programs, absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful programs that help people buy a home. The trade-off is that you're going to have a slightly higher mortgage interest rate with that loan. Of course, you know, if rates go down at some point in the future, you can always do a refinance and get the lower rate. But getting your foot into home ownership is really the first step, because it's going to help you start saving more money instead of flushing that money out in rent. But you want to be ready for it, and you need to have that conversation with yourself if it's just you, or with all the decision makers as it pertains to buying your new place whenever the time comes for that. Now, if there's an absolute impasse and you're absolutely not comfortable with everything, then you might want to consider renting for another year, and don't let your lease expiration date coming up actually deter you or force you into making a decision that you may experience buyer's remorse later on. We absolutely do not want you to have buyer's remorse. This is the biggest investment many of us ever make. It's too important to you to get anything wrong. So definitely please follow the advice about how to find a great real estate agent, how to find a great local loan officer. And if you have questions about that, just put me to work. Send me an email. I'll put my contact information up in a few minutes. Just send me an email. I'm happy to put my nationwide network of top real estate agents to work for you and help you get introduced with a great agent that's going to have the right connections and be able to assist you and make sure the process is fun and smooth and easy for you by giving you more guidance and more information about your local real estate market where you are. So, you know, those are some things to consider. Now, I did get a comment in last night, and I'd like to touch on this very briefly. The gentleman had contacted me on one of the videos about seller and buyer closing costs. It's extremely important that you as a buyer understand that whenever you get ready to purchase a home, not only do you need to be planning for the down payment amount, and again, down payment assistance program work a little bit different, talk to your local loan officer about that, but you also need to be planning for your buyer closing costs. While buyer closing costs can be negotiable and are negotiable in a purchase agreement towards a seller, you need to understand what your local marketplace is doing. If you're in a seller's market, it's highly unlikely you're going to get any of your buyer closing costs paid for. It may be possible with some. It's going to come down to the property and the actual individual seller, whether they're going to be assisting with that or not. If you're in a normalized market, there might be a little bit more of an opportunity there. And then if you're in a buyer's market, then obviously that would probably be almost the rule of the day, or the expectation, that sellers are helping out with those buyer closing costs. But it's important to understand that you have buyer closing costs. So right now, going through your mind is likely, Andrew, how much are buyer closing costs, so that whenever I get ready to calculate how much it's going to cost for me to get into my new home, what should I be planning for? You should be planning for the down payment amount of the loan product that you're going to be using. If it's FHA, it's generally 3.5%. If it's down payment assistance, then you're going to need to get with your local loan officer to see how exactly that works. But it'll cover essentially normally an FHA loan product for down payment assistance, 3.5%. Then you're going to want to calculate out your buyer closing costs. Now, generally, buyer closing costs are about 2% to 4% of a sales price around the country. So if you're looking at a $400,000 home, and let's go on the high side here for your buyer closing costs, a $400,000 home times 4% is going to be $16,000 you need to be prepared for your buyer closing costs. So that's something to consider, it's something to know about, and it's something to ask about when you have your buyer consultation meeting with your trusted real estate advisor and whenever you chat with your local loan officers. So if you have any questions, as promised, I'm going to go ahead and put my contact information up right now. Please feel free to reach out to me, even if you just want to say hi. I always enjoy hearing from you. And just like I said on the beginning of this video, if you haven't already done so, I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. Please subscribe to this channel. Please like this video. And lastly, please share this video around with somebody you know it's going to be the help. Thank you so much for watching today. And between now and next time, I'm wishing you and your family a lifetime full of love, wealth, abundance, and happiness. Thank you for being here today. We'll see you again soon.